Hi everyone. So today I wanted to talk about some of the bands that I kind of used to really be into for a while or maybe for a few months, and that lately haven't been that much part of my very favorite bands. So basically, I have fallen out of love with them, even though I still like them. None of these bands I dislike now. I just have not really been into them as much these past months or years. So let's just get into it. The first one that I wanted to mention is an indie rock band, and it's a very known one, Modest Mouse. I really got into them some years ago, maybe 3 or 4, and for quite a while, for several years, they were kind of in my top 5 or sometimes my favorite band of all time. And it's varied a lot with time, but I have noticed that the last year or the last 2 years, they really haven't been even like top 10 or anything. There's some albums by them that I still find really memorable, but those albums kind of like barely figure, let's say, in my top 100 or top 50. Um, and I just have not been that much into them. So I was really, for a while, my favorite albums by them were the first one, The Long Drive Something Something, and The Lonesome Crowded West. And of course, The Moon and Antarctica, I really liked it as well. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that their, I guess, later stuff, I don't really find as appealing because it's lost a lot of its initial sadness and unsophistication. Kind of like the music has always been, or it used to be, really casual and kind of haphazard. I don't really know how else to explain it, but it used to be really raw and kind of sincere, heartfelt in terms of the lyrics and the music and everything. And the lyrics are really what makes the band at the end of it all. And I just sense a lot of melancholy and sadness, but kind of really simple, but put in very simple words. And so that's what made it feel so honest. And these last albums, they don't necessarily feel this honest, but they do feel just happier, and I guess it's just a natural progress of maybe him, Isaac Brock, I think his name is, growing up and becoming more of an older adult or something like that. But it just has a lot of it just has lost a lot of appeal for me, but I do often listen to the first albums by them, and I think those are great. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with the last albums, the last two albums especially. I think they actually have great songs going on there, but they just don't really have the same style that they used to that appealed to me from the beginning. So there's that. Now this next one used to be, for a short while, it was a metal band, but then they changed styles a lot, and The Gathering it is. So The Gathering, I don't know, I was into them during most of, pretty much all of middle school and even a little bit of elementary school. I just hadn't ever heard something like that before, and I really thought they were quite a unique band. And just in general, the style was like nothing else I knew, and I didn't really know how to classify them. And I really loved Nick's voice. Those albums with her were definitely the best, as most of the fans would say. And I liked about them that they are kind of this happier, melancholic type of music. In the sense that it sounds sweet and nice and beautiful, but it's sad, and it's kind of conflicted emotions, because sad is kind of a simple way of putting it. Their songs aren't necessarily just straight up sad, they are just maybe nostalgic, and they just give really complex feelings that tend to be on the darker side. Their lyrics are always impressed me. The music was still just working with the lyrics to make something really interesting. It wasn't just like a lyrics band. And now whenever I look at their discography, I'm like, yeah, I like this, but I'm not sure if I really want to sit down and listen to a whole album by them. I just kind of tired myself of it because I was so into them for quite a while, and I just listened to a lot of their songs are just I just listened to over and over. After a while, I just felt like there was really not much else to discover. And a band that also is in this list and that interestingly influenced The Gathering is Dead Can Dance. Honestly, I feel kind of weird saying this because I like goth music a lot, and Dead Can Dance is really a band that I was quite a fan of for a while. Again, I would say that they were really in my top 5 at some point. I have to say that their discography, I have realized with me, a lot of the albums I just kind of have grown to not like as much. And the ones that I have kept really loving are ones that just don't make a lot of their discography. They're just like a few of the albums they have made. I specifically am talking about their first album, their self-titled one, and also Within the Realm of a Dying Sun. Those are the ones that I would say are really in my favorite albums of all time category. Because other albums, they were just kind of getting weird, and they were definitely trying to do something different, but sometimes it was jarring. Or with their last album, I think that one sounds a little more bland and more like straight up background music, to be honest with you, whereas the first albums were just a bit more fresh and a bit more had a bit more entertaining value. Um, you could say that. I really love just Lisa Gerard's voice, and Brendan Perry's voice also is very nice. But something that I always appreciated from them was that sort of glossolalia thing that she did a lot. Because I never heard of that happening in music until I started listening to them, and it was really interesting to me. And seeing her especially sing live was really, I mean, I never saw them in person, but in videos on YouTube and stuff, she was amazing live. And I think maybe my falling out of love with them had a lot to do with the fact that I watched some interviews and they seemed a little, I don't want to say uptight, but kind of strange and almost like they just disliked each other or disliked the interviewer or their fans or something like that. I'm not sure what I would say, but I didn't really get a nice feeling or of their attitude. And I don't know, I mean, obviously I still listen to them, specifically those 2 albums that I mentioned, but they're really not my favorite band anymore. Not really close to my favorite band anymore. So another one of this list is one that probably was my ultimate favorite band during the first year of middle school and the last year of elementary school, and that was Creator. I don't dislike them at all nowadays, but it's kind of funny to me now how they used to be my ultimate favorite band back then, but now Sodom has pretty much replaced them for me. And I don't mean just because they're both German thrash bands, but just generally, I tend to find that Creator really had some kind of not that great albums that I don't know how, but I was kind of uncritical of them when I first listened to them being in elementary school. I'm talking about things like, what are those albums called? Endorama, the ones. I liked those a lot in the years that I mentioned, but after a while, as I started listening, getting into them again, I was like, hey, this was really never that good. And I still love their old school stuff, their older stuff, and a lot of people say they really like their newer stuff. And I have liked it a lot, but I have found it hard to get back into them after I stopped listening to them and I just kind of got into other bands. Because they're really, I don't know, I remember that I used to really love Enemy of God, for example. It had a lot to do with the fact that I was new to listening to metal, so I was easily impressed by metal of all types. And so maybe I didn't have really high standards. I don't know, man, but I just don't like them as much as I used to. That's all I know. But I still like them, of course. It's just that I have known so many other bands that they really don't stand out as much as they used to. And the last one that I'm going to mention is one that is probably the most popular out of all of these, so it could be easily controversial, but I wasn't really into them for a long time. It was maybe like 6 months at most, but it is Rammstein. I guess I just ruined them for myself because I got into them so quickly. I mean, I guess one day I was like, hey, why don't I listen to some of these bands, because a lot of people love and talk about them. And I listened to their discography really quick. I was kind of, I guess not forcing myself because I was enjoying it, but I was going so quickly that maybe I shouldn't have done that. I'm not sure, but it really went as fast as it came. You know, it was. Um, I basically listened to other songs, and I got into them, and for a while I was listening to so much of them. They were kind of my favorite band at the time. Again, maybe a few months. It has a lot to do with the fact that maybe they're. I'm not sure that if maybe their songs just kind of sounded the same to me after a while. I still listen to them sometimes. It's just that in general their discography is not. I'm just not very curious about it, or curious to know if they have or will do anything new. I'm not really sure anything about them. If they still play live, if they still, are making albums and stuff like that. Because that music style, industrial music in general, it was never really my thing. So they were kind of the exception for a while. But then I was like, hey, I don't really like this type of music that much. So it just wore off like that, pretty much. That's what I would say about it. I'm not really sure how to explain it otherwise. So that's pretty much everything I will say today. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tell me of some of the bands that you at some point really loved, but lately you haven't been that much into. And thank you for watching. Bye.